Hello, we're going to continue our work on measurement this week. We're looking at lengths in particular, and today our starters are a little bit different. So I looked up the Harry Potter currency and I found out, according to the Gringotts Bank, that 1 galleon is equal to 17 sickles and 1 sickle is 29 nuts. Okay, so obviously they're not dealing with ones and hundreds like we tend to do. So 2 questions: how many nuts is 6 sickles and how many sickles is 12 galleons? Okay, so let's do this first one. How many nuts is 6 sickles? So if we look here, we can see that 1 sickle is 29 nuts. So if we've got 6 sickles, we're going to have 6 times 29, but it's easier to do it as 29 times 6. Okay, so 9 sixes are 54, 2 sixes are 12, add the 5 makes 17. So the answer is 174 nuts. And then the next, then the next bit, how many sickles is 12 galleons? And I can see here that 1 sickle is 29 nuts. That's not going to help us with that bit. 1 galleon is 17 sickles. So we've got 12 galleons, not 1. So we need 12 times 17. And again, it's easier to do it the other way around, 17 times 12, because we should know our 12 times table. Okay, so we're going to do 7 times 12. Remember what that is? It's 84. And 1 12 is 12. Add 8 makes 20. So the answer is 204 sickles in 12 galleons. Okay. So if we have a look at our plan for this week, yesterday we looked at the kind of units that we would use for measuring length, area, volume and weight. So today we're going to concentrate on length. Okay, so first of all, I want us to think about what items do we use for measuring length. So that's what physical items, like something you can pick up to measure a length. What items do we use for measuring length and what units do they measure in? Okay, so you have a think about that. Maybe pause the video, have a think about all the different things that you can use for measuring lengths and what units they use. Okay, so I'm going to kick off with a ruler. I'm going to say we could use a tape measure. We could use a trundle wheel. We could use, in a car, it's called the odometer. So let's think, what else could we use? What do we sometimes see in a classroom? There's sometimes what we call a meter stick. Let's see what else for measuring length. Anything else? Well, let's look at what units these items use. Okay, so let's start with a ruler because that was the first thing that we wrote down. So the ruler that I've got measures centimetres on one side and inches on the other. Okay. You can also, sometimes you get a ruler that's got centimetres on one side and millimetres on the other. Okay, so a tape measure, let's think about that. So a tape measure is a flexible way of measuring things. So you can have like a fabric tape measure for taking body measurements if you're making clothes. Or for example, if you were buying a bracelet online, you might need to know the distance around your wrist, that kind of thing. So a tape measure can measure in centimetres or millimetres. Remember, you can also use a tape measure for measuring the length of a room or a long piece of wood or something if you're working in that kind of business. So you can measure metres with a tape measure. Okay. You also, on a lot of tape measures, find inches. Okay, So next, a trundle wheel. So I'm not sure if you remember, in my classroom there was one of these items where what it's got basically is it's a stick with a handle, and then it's got measurements all the way around the outside, and it's got a little like clicky thing here that when you push it along the ground, every time this clicky bit goes past the stick, it makes a click, and that means 1 metre, okay? And so if you want to measure the length of the playground, you could use a trundle wheel for that. So you would just start off at a click, and then you'd walk all the way along the playground and count the clicks, okay? So that measures metres. Okay, a metre stick, despite its name, obviously you could measure metres with that, but you'd have to lay it down and then note where the edge was and lay it down again and lay it down again and lay it down again. So actually, if you look at a metre stick, it's divided into centimetres. So that's what you would possibly be measuring using a metre stick. Remember, the whole stick is a metre, and it can measure centimetres as well. Now, an odometer is the bit in the car on the dashboard that tells you how far you've gone. Okay, so in this country, odometers measure miles, because if you talk about the mileage of a used car, it means how many miles has it driven altogether. But if you were in Europe, your odometer would be measuring kilometres, because they don't measure in miles. Okay, so we've got quite a few different units of length here, and what we're going to do, let me just go back to tape measure, because there's one that we've missed off. A tape measure that measures inches also measures feet, okay? When we talk about our height, sometimes we would describe our height as 5 feet 6 inches. So a tape measure can measure feet as well, okay? So all the blue units that I've written down here either belong to the metric system or the imperial system, and we talked about that yesterday a little bit. So we're just going to make sure we know which are which. All right, which go in which column, so make that a little bit smaller. So let's start over here. So centimetres, millimetres, metres, they all belong together and they form part of the metric system. So we're going to put them in our metric list. So centimetres, millimetres and metres are going in there. Inches and feet belong to the imperial system. So we still use them, but we tend not to teach them because we are slowly moving over to the metric system. Okay, on the odometer, we can see we've got miles, that's the imperial system, and the kilometres is the metric system. On our ruler, let's see, we've already got centimetres, that's in the metric system. Inches is in our imperial system, and we've already got millimetres. The trundle wheel measures in metres, and we've already got that. And then the metre stick, we've already got centimetres and metres. So this is all our units that we're going to be looking at today. We've got centimetres, millimetres, metres and kilometres. That's what we're going to focus on. We're not going to be focusing on the imperial system, but just so you know, 1 foot is 12 inches. Okay, all right, so moving on. We're going to look at how to convert units of length here. Okay, so we're looking at kilometres, metres and centimetres just now. And I want to write down a few bits of information, and then we're going to fill in this little diagram that I've got here. All right, so the things that you need to know are that 1 kilometre is 1,000 metres. Okay, when you see the word kilo in front of something, it means 1,000. Okay, it means 1,000 times. Okay, 1 metre is 100 centimetres. Okay, now remember that cent means 100, doesn't it? 100 times. Okay, and 1 centimetre is 10 millimeters. Okay, so meal is French for 1,000, and that means that a millimeter is 1,000th of a meter. Okay, because mil means 1,000. Okay, so what we're going to do is fill in this diagram now. We're going to look at how we change from kilometres to metres, metres to centimetres, centimetres to millimetres, and then how we do it when we're going back the way as well. Then we're going to practice. Okay, so first of all, to change kilometres into metres, if we go back here, we can see that 1 kilometre is 1,000 metres. So however many kilometres we've got, we would need to multiply that by 1,000, and that would tell us how many metres we've got. So we can write times 1,000 on there. Okay, to change metres into centimetres, we're using this arrow here and we're going that way. So if you've got 1 metre, that's 100 centimetres. So however many metres you've got, if you want to change it into centimetres, you're going to multiply it by 100. Okay, and then centimetres to millimetres. If we know that 1 centimetre is 10 millimetres, then it must be the case that however many centimetres we've got, if we want to know how many millimetres, we're going to multiply it by 10. Okay, so let's go the other way. If we had an amount of millimetres and wanted to change that into centimetres, remember whatever length you've got, so if you draw a line, if you know how many millimetres it is, and then you're going to work out how many centimetres it is, there would be fewer centimetres, wouldn't there? Okay, so we're not going to be multiplying this time, we're going to be dividing, and we know that there are 10 millimetres in a centimetre. So it's the same all the way up here, we're going to be dividing. So to change centimetres to metres, there are 100 centimetres in a metre, so you must have to divide by 100 here. And then metres to kilometres, we're going to divide by 1,000 for that one. Okay, so we'll be able to use this. It'd be a good idea actually for you to perhaps make a copy of this into your jotter, or on a piece of paper, so you've got it handy, because you're going to need to come back to this, in life, not just in maths, when you are dealing with any kind of length. So what we're going to do just now is we're going to use our little diagram to change the following lengths into centimetres. So we're starting off, some of our lengths are in millimetres, some are in metres, some are in kilometres. So we're going to use our diagram to help us here. So first of all, we're going to change 50 millimetres into centimetres. So find millimetres, find centimetres, and we want to go millimetres to centimetres. So it's this arrow that we're following. So we're going to be dividing by 10. Okay, so 50 divided by 10 is 5 centimetres. Okay, next one. Again, we're changing millimetres to centimetres. So for all of these three, we're using this arrow. So we're dividing by 10. So 1,320 divided by 10. Remember, move all your digits one place to the right. That gives us 132 centimetres. If you're not sure about your multiplying and dividing by 10 and 100 and 1,000, you maybe need to look back at some of the other lessons that we've done earlier on. Okay, with 107 millimetres, when we divide that by 10, remember we're moving one place to the right, and remember the decimal point in 107 is after the 7, so when we move everything one place to the right, we get 10.7 centimetres. Okay, so now our next column, these are all amounts of metres, and we're going to change them into centimetres. So here's metres, and here's centimetres, so we're changing metres 2 centimetres. So we're multiplying by 100 because we're going this way. So we're going to multiply by 100 for each of these. So 3 times 100 is 300. 48 times 100 is 4800. And if we write that down, we can see that 4800 means actually 4800. Then 56.1, multiplying that by 100. When we multiply by 100, we're moving 2 places to the left. So 1 place would make it 561. 2 places would make it 5610. 5,610 centimetres. And 0.35, when we move those figures 2 places to the left, that's 1 place, that's 2 places. So it's 35 centimetres. So just to go back, this column we were dividing by 10. This column we were multiplying by 100. Now, look at this third column. We want to change these amounts into centimetres. Okay, so there's kilometres and there's centimetres. So they're not next to each other, but we want to go from kilometres to centimetres. So we're going to have to follow these 2 arrows. Okay, now we're going to multiply by 1,000 and multiply by 100. Okay, so let's try that for this one. 5. So if we multiply 5 by 1,000, we get 5,000. And then if we multiply that by 100, we need another 2 zeros on there. So what that gives us is 500,000. And we can put commas in. You count 3 digits from the right each time to put your commas in. Remember, these are centimetres. And what we're doing here is times 1,000 and times 100. Okay, so 8.02 kilometres. Let me clear a bit of space over here. So 8.02. So we want to multiply that by 1,000. So moving 3 spaces, 1 space would put the 0 in front of the point, 2 spaces would put the 2 in front of the point. So we've got 8020 when we multiply by 1,000 because we moved 3 places. And then we need to move another 2 places to the left. So effectively what that's going to do is add 2 more zeros. So it's going to be 8020 and 2 more zeros. So we can put our comma there and say that that's centimetres. And then the last one, 0.68. Moving 1 place would put the 6 in front of the point. 2 places would put the 8 in front of the point. So it'd be 680 for multiplying by 1,000. And then we need to multiply that by 100 as well. So add 2 more zeros. So you've got 680 and 2 more zeros gives you 68,000 centimetres. Okay, so that was changing to centimetres. And then lastly today, we're going to just take each of these amounts, these lengths, and change them to the units that are in purple. So we're going to change metres to millimetres for our first question here. So let's look back at our diagram. Metres to millimetres, so we're going this way. So we'll need to multiply by 100 and multiply by 10. So we're doing 49 times 100 and times 10. So if we multiply 49 by 100, you get 4900, and then times 10 you need another 0. So there's multiplied by 100, and there's times another 10. So 49 metres is 49,000 millimetres. The next one, kilometres to centimetres. So kilometres to centimetres, we're doing what we're doing before, times 1,000 and then times 100. So we're doing 16 times 1,000 and times 100. So 16 times 1,000 is 16,000. And then multiplying that by 100 as well gives you another 2 zeros. So count to know where our commas go. We've got 1, 2, 3, then we can put a comma, and then 1, 2, 3, and we can put another comma. So what that actually says is 1,600,000 centimetres. Okay, but then it stands to reason that that is a big number, because if you think about it, 16 kilometres, driving 16 kilometres, we're looking at how many centimetres that is, so it's got to be loads, hasn't it? Right, the next one, 4,997 centimetres, changing that into kilometres. So centimetres to kilometres, centimetres to kilometres. So we're using these arrows. So we need to divide by 100 and divide by 1,000. So divide by 100 and divide by 1,000. So 4,997 divided by 100. Remember, that's where the point is. So when you move it 2 places to the right, you get 49.97. And if we divide that by 1,000, we need to move it 3 places to the right. So 1 place would go there. 2 places would be there. And 3 places would be there. So 0.04997 kilometres. Okay, so that's us for today. So well done. There are practice questions on converting units of length. So I hope you get on okay with those. If there's anything you're not sure about, just give me a shout. See you later.